Stephanie, and welcome to the Reading Room. This is the playlist where I review what I read in the last month, and I do my best to keep it spoiler-free, or at least I'll warn you if I'm about to spoil something. And as I say in all my reviews, these are solely about the books, not about the authors as people. So let's go ahead and dive into the books that I read in November. Though I will say that November was not a stellar month for me in terms of book quality. There are a few that I'm going to review today that I really didn't like, and one that by the end of it I wanted to light it on fire. But the good news is that I did get more books done this month than I expected, given that it's NaNoWriMo, and I was able to read 6 when I thought I was only going to get to 4. So yay me. Alright, so first up, we have the Coworker by Freida McFadden. And I took this with me on a work trip, as it seemed fitting to take this on a work trip. And this was also my first McFadden read, and I'm definitely looking forward to giving her other work a try, as I enjoyed this. But let's go ahead and see what the book promised to be about. Dawn's shift is strange. At least, everyone thinks so at Vixt, the nutritional supplement company where Dawn works as an accountant. She never says the right thing, she has no friends, and she is always at her desk at precisely 8:45 a.m. So when Dawn doesn't show up to the office one morning, her coworker, Natalie Farrell, beautiful, popular, top sales rep 5 years running, is surprised. Then she receives an unsettling anonymous phone call that changes everything. It turns out Dawn wasn't just an awkward outsider. She was being targeted by someone close. And now, Natalie is irrevocably tied to Dawn as she finds herself caught in a twisted game of cat and mouse that leaves her wondering, who's the real victim? But one thing is incredibly clear. Somebody hated Dawn's shift, enough to kill. The Coworker is a tense, unput-downable thriller from New York Times bestselling author Freida McFadden that explores the dark ways the past can echo through the present with deadly consequences. So overall, I liked this. I was intrigued by the story. I was curious to see which version of the story is true. It was very much what I would call a popcorn thriller, but I was really here for it. It was definitely bingeable and something that I was excited to pick back up. I will say I did call 2 of the twists, but not a few of the others. But once one of the twists did happen, I kind of realized how similar this plot is to something else that is very popular. And then that's really all I could think about and compare it to. So we have our 2 main characters, Dawn and Natalie, and both characters make you question reality and make you question whose version of the story is more rooted in reality. I will also say there is a main focus on bullying in this book, so if that's a trigger for you, you may want to avoid this. And then it was kind of interesting as Dawn, I think, was autistically coded, and I am not the right person to speak on how that was handled, but I feel like I got that if that's what it was intended to be. I've seen some people say that this aspect was handled really poorly and the author was making fun of people on the spectrum, and I've seen other reviews that said it was well represented. For me, personally, and not someone who is on the spectrum, I thought the representation worked, and as for people making fun of Dawn, it was shown in that way to underline the main theme of bullying. I didn't get the impression that the author was actually making fun of people on the autism spectrum, and the characters in this book are not really good people, so that kind of just reinforces the message that these people are terrible. So, I don't know. Again, it just kind of shows that the adults are still bullies at heart by going out of their way to make fun of Dawn or exclude her from things just because she's different. So I did like that there was a neurodivergent character in this, but Dawn annoyed me, and not because of her need to be on time, her need to be honest, or even her need to eat monochromatic meals, or even her inability to catch social cues. It is not about her neurodivergence. She annoyed me so much with some of her choices, her wishy-washiness, being hypocritical. and her obsession with turtles. Like, if I read the word turtle one more time, I was going to throw this out the window. I understand that turtles are her passion and she's fixated on them, but hearing about the turtles in the emails from other people, talking about them being on her desk, and pretty much every single page having a turtle mention, it got to be a bit too much and just too repetitive. Natalie also has her low points, especially her constantly talking about earning or losing girlfriend or boyfriend points. What? Seriously? What? She's a grown-ass adult who is thinking of a point system with her partner? Like, I don't get it. Like, she's constantly assigning points to her boyfriend, who she thinks might be the one and someone she wants to marry. If they're the one, then you don't need to keep score. It made Natalie seem really immature when she's kind of portrayed as like this really calculating person who has to be somewhat smart. There were also some plot threads that I didn't really feel like they got a resolution or explanation, but they were minor things. This is also a me thing, as I hate when stories are written in first-person point of view, but the characters have to go out of their way to avoid thinking about certain topics or intentionally not think about certain things to save the big reveal for the right time. It's annoying. If we can't be in their head, then write in third person. Now, I know I sound annoyed, but overall, I did really like this. I'm giving it a solid 3.5, maybe 4 stars out of 5. It was a good thriller. It had good twists, and it was a really quick and compelling read. I enjoyed reading this while traveling and would definitely recommend it if you're looking for something easy, but something that also holds your attention too. I have seen some reviews that said that this wasn't the best McFadden read, so if this is kind of like bottom of the barrel, things can only go up. I like this, and I'm excited to read more of her work. Alright, so next up we have a leftover from October. I was kind of disappointed I didn't get to this one during the spooky season, as we are talking about The Graveyard Shift by Maria Lewis. This came in my book drop subscription, so let's go ahead and see what this book promised. Tinsel Monroe is the host of The Graveyard Shift, a late-night radio show where she and her loyal listeners celebrate the sounds of cult cinema. She has busted her ass to carve out this section of the airwaves, and nothing will keep her from reaching her primetime dreams. That is, until someone gets murdered live on air. She's freaked out by the horrible incident. Her true crime-obsessed sister Pandora is fascinated by it. Detectives assure them the killer will soon be caught. Yet, with a growing macabre audience that likely includes the killer, Tinsel begins receiving strange messages. Her home and her workplace suddenly aren't the sanctuaries she once thought they were. And the bodies won't stop dropping, with the killer, or killers, striking in increasingly gruesome ways. In order to survive, Tinsel is going to have to listen to more than just the airwaves. So this was tough, as this book sounded right up my alley. And again, I was bummed that I didn't get to this in October, as it actually starts on Halloween night and features like slasher movie vibes and a killer with an agenda. But sadly, for whatever reason, this just didn't do it for me. This book took a lot longer to read than I expected, as I just never felt compelled to pick it back up and didn't really feel that need to finish it. I will say it is a well-plotted story, and Lewis knows what she's doing, but for some reason I struggled with this. I was kind of bored when reading this, the middle dragged, and it felt like Tinsel wasn't that worried about who was targeting her and killing random horror movie fans. I guess I just expected more investigation and more looking for clues, especially since Pandora, her sister, is into true crime. I guess I expected them to partner up and we're gonna kill the teen slasher killer. It kind of felt like Tinsel was oh, okay, I'm gonna go to work. Doesn't matter that people are dying. Maybe don't go to work. And seeing as the book spans 300 pages, it gets really slow in some points. I also expected less time spent on insignificant things or things that didn't really pay off. We spend a ton of time talking about the fact that Tinsel and Pandora are adopted. Did you know they're adopted? They're adopted, and they don't look alike. They're close, but they're adopted. Their parents adopted them, you see? Like, I get it. I mean, there's a section that I highlighted on page 266. So this is emphasizing the point that we spend time on, like, insignificant little details that, like, I don't care. Like, just get to the murder, yo. It's page 266. It was dusk as she approached the garage, the smell of oil and rubber telling Tinsel she was in the right place. That and the loud music blaring from the speakers. She wasn't sure she would believe someone was a real mechanic if they didn't have loud music blaring from the speakers, frankly. And this was a real mechanic's garage, too. It wasn't glossy or new like some of the joints that popped up alongside car dealerships. The paint on the sign above her was peeling as she walked under it, but from the sheer number of people hovering around at the end of the workday, she could tell this place did a lot of business. It was one of those hidden gems, she suspected. A great mechanic that you heard about through the word of mouth. Looked a little dodgy on the outside, but actually provided a great service for reasonable prices. Those joints were hard to find. Stepping into the tiny office that made up the reception area, Tinsel waited patiently behind a woman as she settled her bill. Her eyes flicked to the road map of Melbourne that was pinned to the wall, along with a poster of the importance of getting a regular car service. Oh my god, she went to an auto body shop. Like, yeah, that's 3 paragraphs of just basic description of an auto body shop that is coming into the story at chapter 19. That isn't even like a big player. Like, why was so much time spent on just that, setting up that description and that entry? Again, it was little things like that just really jumped out to me. And there's also a romance that didn't do it for me. I didn't really like it because I just didn't see or believe their chemistry. And in a way, it was really unprofessional the way that it played out. And I didn't care for it. I normally like romances as subplots, but here it really seemed to overshadow the main plot of finding out who the killer is. Again, it's the romance is more important than understanding why this person is targeting Tinsel. Like, she's more upset that her boo isn't texting her back than realizing that people are dying and it might be connected to her and she's got a giant target on her back. Like, girl, sort out your priorities. Also, content warning, there are sex scenes if that's not your jam. I also felt like there were some themes or messages that were pushed really hard that didn't add much to the story or character development, or pretty much had zero impact. Then why bring it up? Why call attention to it if we're not actually going to talk about it or have it impact the story? So lastly, that ending infuriated me. I was so pissed off with this ending. And we don't get a lot of time for the resolution. It's just a terrible ending, and then here's what happened next, and we're done. Like, plus the quote-unquote resolution doesn't fall in line with everything else that happened before it. I was mad by the time I was closing this book. It wanted to do a lot, but it didn't really do a lot of it well, unfortunately. Honestly, I think had the romance not been the sole or the majority of the focus of the book, and Tinsel actually did more work on figuring out like what was going on, using her love of horror movies to solve things, working with her true crime obsessed sister, I think this would have been a much stronger read, especially trying to sell it as like kind of a October Halloween-y read. As it stands, the ending left a sour taste in my mouth, and not the good kind like sucking on a warhead. I'm reading this 2 stars, and I'm really disappointed that I have to rate it so low. There was a lot of potential here, and I just don't think it delivered. Alright, so next up was a book that was totally bingeable, as I think I read this in like 2 days, and absolutely had to finish it. I'd also seen it promoted on Bookstagram, so I had to go out and get my own copy, and that is You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Jeneva Rose. So let's go ahead and see what the book promised and why I had to rush out and buy it. Grace Evans, an overworked New Yorker looking for a total escape from her busy life, books an Airbnb on a ranch in the middle of Wyoming. When she arrives at the idyllic getaway, she's pleased to find that the owner is a handsome man by the name of Calvin Wells, and he's eager to introduce her to his easygoing way of life. But there are things Grace discovers that she's not too pleased about. A lack of cell phone service, a missing woman, and a feeling that something isn't right with the ranch. Despite her uneasiness, the two bond and start to fall for one another. However, as her departure date nears, things change for the worse. What began as a playful romance soon turns into a complicated web of lies. Grace grows wary of Calvin, as his infatuation for her seems to have morphed into obsession. Calvin fears that Grace is hiding something from him, including her reason for staying at his ranch to begin with. Vacation flings typically end in heartbreak, but for Grace and Calvin, it'll be far more destructive. So I'm going to say I guessed the ending right away. Like, as 3 pages in, as soon as I read one of the characters, I'm like, okay, I know where the story is going. And I think that the use of first-person point of view was an interesting one, as yes, it does ramp up tension and puts us like right into the story. But again, I think it is very hard to keep secrets from readers when we're supposed to be in the characters' heads, and authors have to do some serious bending over backwards to hide reveals, and at times that really played out here and made me struggle with this book. Like, the characters would be all, he wasn't the only liar, or we were both keeping secrets. I know, get to it. Like, people just don't think like that. We're not typically all cryptic in our own heads because we're not hiding anything from anybody. It just didn't work for me, as it makes it very obvious that I'm reading a story. And yes, I am aware that I am reading a book, but it added just an extra level of separation that first-person point of view typically eliminates. So it just felt really funny that the author's trying to pull us into the story, but then like just putting up this wall. I didn't like it. I really wish we had gotten both perspectives in third, so things could have been hidden more, or we wouldn't know what they're thinking. We would have to go based on their body language, and like, could it just be this character is misreading this person? I don't know. And then, again, I called the twist. After the reveal, the characters are suddenly acting very different compared to what we saw in the previous 200-some pages. And I just felt like there wasn't enough foreshadowing for these character 180s like that. So speaking of the ending, predicted it. I still liked it, but it also felt extremely rushed and didn't wrap up everything well, in my opinion. I expected the ending, but I was still a wee bit disappointed about it. Like I said, I read this in 2 days, so I was definitely intrigued and had to keep reading and understand what was happening. It was well-paced, and the short chapters really make for a quick read. And I guess it's plotted decently, like if you can really maximize your suspension of disbelief. Truly, I'm not sure how to rate this. I had to keep reading, but I don't know. It was kind of predictable and somewhat awkward. Like, I have a lot of questions about why characters behave the way they did. I also read another review that said they just felt really uncomfortable, and that's a really good word for the reading experience. There's also a lot of romance and spicy scenes that just didn't work for me. This really should not have been labeled as a thriller, as it's like more romantic suspense with a twist thrown in at the end to make it a thriller. And it just, I don't know. My gut instinct is to rate this as a very like middle of the road 3 stars, as it obviously held my interest, but it was just so predictable. And looking back, it's kind of a bit boring. Like, with how it ended, we could have had a lot more fun with certain scenes, but we just didn't. Maybe I'm going to drop my rating to 2 stars, as, like, I don't hate that I read this, but I didn't love it either. I'm going to be pretty cautious about checking out Rose's other work. Also, I have to say, authors, if you're going to do the meta thing, you better have an amazing ending. Like, you do not get to throw in lines like Grace's picking out a book to read while she's hanging out at the Airbnb. Finally, a thriller. This one promised a twisty ending I wouldn't see coming. It seemed every thriller promised that these days, but few actually delivered. You can't pretend to be in on the joke and then end up being the butt of it. especially in a book like this, that I guessed the ending within 3 pages. And I was right. So don't sit here acting like, hoo-hoo-ha, I'm hiding a great twist, when you didn't. It's really awkward. I didn't like it when The Matrix did it. I don't like it here. It's just, so, again, fine. Why? Why was November such a bad month for me? So, next up, we have People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd. This was an add-on to one of my Book of the Month orders, as the premise sounded really intriguing, and look at that cover. That cover's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and see what the book promised to be about. To her adoring fans, Emmy Jackson, aka @the_mama_bear, is the honest insta-mum who always tells it like it is. To her skeptical husband, a washed-up novelist who knows just how creative Emmy can be with the truth, she is a breadwinning powerhouse, brilliant at monetizing the intimate details of their family life. To one of Emmy's dangerously obsessive followers, she's the woman who has everything, but deserves none of it. As Emmy's marriage begins to crack under the strain of her growing success and her moral compass veers wildly off course, she becomes more vulnerable to a very real danger circling ever closer to her family. In this deeply addictive tale of psychological suspense, Ellery Lloyd delves into the dark side of influencer culture, technology, and the way we live today. A perceptive and chilling look at the perils of parenting online, People Like Her explores our desperate need to be seen and the lengths we'll go to be liked by strangers. It asks what and whom we sacrifice when we make our private lives public and ultimately lose control of whom we let in. So at first when I saw how small the book is, I figured I would fly right through this, that it would be a really quick, easy thriller. And oh boy, was I wrong. This was not great. I cannot stand how many books are classified as thrillers these days when they're not thrilling. This was more like domestic suspense or mystery. Most of it is pretty boring, and we're simply following this terrible influencer around. I have absolutely no idea what Emmy's motivation is, besides money, I guess, which for a book like this that's going to be a thriller, it wasn't a good enough motivation for me, to be honest. At times, it doesn't even seem like she even likes her kids and is content to use them as content. I didn't like Emmy. I didn't like her husband, Dan, and I really felt horrible for her kids. I just expected a lot more from this. Again, it's boring. It's so boring and slow and unbalanced. We even get little snippets from the stalker, but even that was revealed too slowly, and the twists that came with that were pretty underwhelming, and I didn't like how things played out. Theme of this month, I guess, is the ending was terrible. It felt like the authors, which is a husband and wife duo, both assumed or thought the other was going to write the ending, and then they realized they weren't, so they had to quickly rush on it, and it was really sloppy and didn't wrap everything up. It kind of read like they just wanted the book to be over with and didn't care about the ending or making it satisfying. Some things happen, but then everything is fine. I even felt like there were contradictions. Something happened, but then it didn't happen or wasn't addressed in the epilogue. What? Also, with the writing style, this was not up my alley. It was kind of rambly and monologue-y, and I know those aren't words, but I don't care. Both Emmy and Dan spend a lot of time thinking their thoughts and not really doing much. I kept expecting some twists around our main characters, again, Emmy's motivation, but we never really get them. And then again, even when we get some twists, they don't really get a proper resolution. I guess I just don't understand the point or what this book was trying to say. I don't understand the characters' motivations, and I don't really care about either of them. I don't understand them. I don't know why they do the things that they do, therefore I don't know why I should care. The one good thing about this was how Emmy kind of did a 180 compared to other influencers and isn't trying to pass herself off as this perfect mom or showcase how amazing her life is and aren't you jealous. She's making things look worse than they are to be more relatable, #Rachel Hollis. It was a pretty interesting way to show the influencer lifestyle. but it's not enough to combat the other flaws in this. The premise had such potential, as did the characters, but it's kind of just wasted here. There's hardly any plot, and it's more just, this happened, then this happened, and this happened, and then I'm going to think about it, and then this happened. And on top of the very little plot, everyone kind of sucks. I mostly feel terrible for the kids and anyone else who is in their lives. Also, some content warnings for this. So this does deal with miscarriages, infertility, and the death of an infant. If those are triggers for you, stay away from this book. All in, I am giving this 2 stars. It was pointless, kind of infuriating, and quite frankly, boring. My time was wasted with this, and I'm not sure I'm going to seek out anything by Ellery Lloyd again. Man, what a disappointing month. All right, next up we have The Last to Vanish by Miranda. Because I was so annoyed with people like her that I swapped out the next book on my to-be-read pile for Miranda, as I love her work and I just needed something good to read and cleanse my palate. So let's see what The Last to Vanish promised. 10 years ago, Abigail Lovett fell into a job she loves, managing the Passage Inn, a cozy resort nestled in the mountains of North Carolina in a town called Cutter's Pass. Tourists are drawn to the town for its outdoor offerings and proximity to the Appalachian Trail, but also for its notorious history as the last known location for 6 different visitors who vanished without a trace over the past 3 decades. When journalist Landon West comes to investigate the story of the Vanishing Trail, then disappears himself, the town and the inn are thrust back into the spotlight. After many months without any leads, Abby is shocked when West's brother, Trey, checks into the Passage Inn one evening. Knowing how cold the case is, Abby can't help but feel for this man. She's all too familiar with how the locals tend to close ranks to outsiders. But it isn't until Abby uncovers incriminating new evidence that she realizes how very little she knows about her coworkers and neighbors, and just how dangerous that is. So, I'm going to preface my review by saying that I'm a huge Miranda stan. I love her work. Her plot's a bit predictable, sure. Are her characters somewhat similar? Sure. But I still enjoy her work and always find myself sucked into her stories and staying up super late to finish them. That being said, this was a weaker work of hers for me. It was a little slower than I expected, and I really struggled to connect with Abby, our main character. This too is written in first-person point of view, and then, again, we find out that certain things were hidden from us, the readers, and it's just a huge pet peeve of mine. I was not happy with some of the reveals that we get, as they shouldn't have been shocking, since the main character knew them all along and just didn't think about them. It's like the main character knew she was in a book and had to not think certain things, so not ruin the reveal for later. The book is also kind of slow and repetitive. I bet some things could have been cut and the story would still work as is. At least the major reveal was realistic and worked with the story, but it was also a bit, Plus, the book relies on a lot of coincidences and, because the plot said so, moments for things to happen the way they need to. There was also a really big cast of minor characters, and there would be times that they would be mentioned, or certain people would be mentioned, and all I could say was, who? Like, I really would have to think about who this random character is, what their significance is to the story, and have I met them before? It did add to the small town feel, but also pulled me out of the story at times when I had to flip back to be like, who the hell are you? Like, why should I know your name? Oh yeah, you run the grocery store? Cool. Okay, let me get back to the story. I also felt that there were some plot threads that didn't get tied up, and I'm not going to lose sleep over them, but I would have appreciated a legit answer to what was going on with some of these subplots, or get some resolution to certain things. Though I do think Miranda really does shine here with her ability to create amazing atmosphere and just that sense of foreboding. This is one thing that I do really love about her writing. She can make me feel like I'm in the setting with the characters. I could see the inn, I could see the town, and I could feel the creepy vibes of the townfolk who are all, you don't belong here, you're not one of us. I really do love her settings, and they really give me the creeps. I like the tension that comes from them, and feeling that tension while her characters explore them, knowing like, ooh, something's probably going to go wrong. And sometimes the settings are even better than the characters we're following. That said, I'm still giving this 3 stars, as I liked it. Not my favorite Megan Miranda book. I really enjoyed The Last House Guest and The Only Survivors, and would recommend those over this like super slow burn. I'll take it. Super slow burn thriller. But if you like Megan Miranda's works, you still might like this. Again, not unhappy I read it, but I think she does have stronger works out there. Whew. Okay, so we are up to the last book. And, oh, buddy. My last book of the month was All I Want by Darcey Bell. I got this in a book buying binge from the book outlet, as I had wanted to give Bell's work a try. I hadn't actually read A Simple Favor, but I did see the movie version, so I opted to skip the book as I knew it was coming. That, and I hated that a main character who is kind of shady shares my name. I don't need to read a book where I'm doing terrible things. But I found this on the book outlet, and it sounded great. So let's see why I thought it sounded great. When Emma's husband Ben falls in love with a neglected Victorian mansion for sale in upstate New York, he swears to her the fixer-upper will be worth the trouble. Sure, the old house is a little dilapidated and has a bit of a creepy past, but the nearby country town seems nice enough. So they set aside any misgivings and make an offer. After all, whatever happens, Emma and Ben are in it together, aren't they? But soon Emma finds herself with a case of buyer's remorse. Why does her husband suddenly seem so distant? Are her neighbors lying to her? Is the house's ominous history repeating itself? And why can't she shake the feeling that she is in danger, and so is her unborn child? Sinister, suspenseful, and utterly engrossing. All I Want is a terrifying descent into the dark side of domestic life that will forever change the way you look at your neighbors and your loved ones. Okay, I am really, really mad about this book. I was really, really mad by the end, and I kind of hated it. This is the book that I want to set on fire. Now, it's not as much as I hate the trash fire that is really good, actually, but this left me with a very bitter taste in my mouth. This is the one time I didn't look at Goodreads before buying a book, and it really bit me in the ass here. I thought Belle had a good reputation, but my God, I wanted to throw this across the room when I finished it. I am that gif of Bradley Cooper throwing that book out the window. That ending is infuriating and beyond stupid. No, 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 Belle, that is not how you end a book. If you do read this, do not read the last chapter. It destroys any goodwill you may have had toward the book, or at least it did for me. Even before the ending, I was feeling pretty meh about this. I really couldn't connect with our main character, Emma, as she's got as much personality as a doormat, and is a doormat to her husband. It really reads kind of weird, as it seems like she only cares about making him happy and has this desperate need for his approval and love, but I don't understand why. He sucks. Ben is the worst. I hope he sits on a cactus. This book is all about like gaslighting, and our girl Emma wonders if she's going crazy, but it's obvious that like things are wrong. And again, her husband is just the worst. I'm going to have to do a wine club video about this, as I have a lot to rant about with this. Like, I truly feel like Belle just did not care about this. There were a bunch of ideas smooshed into one book, and she had no idea how to end this thing. I told my husband it was kind of like reading a Taylor Adams book. I love his work for the first 90%, and then his books just fly off the rails at the end and leave me disappointed. Authors, there's a backspace button. Use it. Delete some things. It's okay. You don't have to worry about catching us off guard with a crazy twist we never see coming. Just give me something good. Know your ending and nail it. One good thing about this stupid dumbfire of a book, at least it's short and it's a very quick read. I got through this in 2 days, mostly because I was hate reading by the end and I just needed to get over the finish line. I am reading this 1 star. Honestly, I would give it 0 if I could. I am mad. This was a waste of time. Even the writing style was not really up my alley. I told my husband it actually kind of reads like some of the placeholder scenes that I have in my current NaNoWriMo project, because I'm just trying to get words on the page and I know I'm going to come back and like fill in the details later, edit some things, fix some stuff up. But it seems Belle skipped that step. Like, this is my first introduction to her work, and based on this, I don't know if I want to try any of her other work. Maybe if I find something in a free little library, I'll grab it, but this really soured me. This was not a good book to end November on, especially since I already had so many two-star or mediocre reads. This just really threw me over the edge. I actually had to take a few days off reading just because I was so annoyed. I was so angry with this book. This is a bad book, and I very much look forward to filming my wine club review about this so I can just talk about everything that happens in it, because this book is just asinine. Alright, so that wraps up what I unfortunately read in November. If you read any of the same books as me this past month, I would love to hear your thoughts, or if you have any recommendations for what I should read in December, please also share those ideas in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next month in the reading room.